kind of make a point. This right here, if I were to walk out into public, would be a crime. But if I put this thin piece of fabric over it, and I had permission from the state, I would suddenly not be a criminal.
And you paid the money.
And I paid the Second Amendment tax, absolutely. So I want to talk about, before I get into these, I want to do a quick little poll, and please be honest, because I know that there are people on all sides of the open carry issue. So I'm going to ask you one of three questions. One, who supports unlicensed, unconditional open carry? Who supports, well hang on, because I want you to know what the options are. Who's kind of on the fence about open carry, and then who just doesn't support open carry. And I don't care about the reasons, but I just one of those things. So first, who supports open carry? Okay, who's kind of on the fence about it, or isn't sure? Okay, and who's just outright opposed to it? Okay, great. Those of you that are pro-open carry, you can go about your merry way. I'm talking to the other guys. My goal is to convince every single one of you, whether you're on the fence or opposed to open carry, why open carry is something that you should support. Because it's got a lot of bad publicity, there's a lot of myths out there, and I want to attack those. Open carry is confrontational. When I started Open Carry Texas, I recognized that on YouTube there are plenty of videos of open carriers out there antagonizing cops, just being jackasses, just to be blunt. And those aren't, that's what I did not want Open Carry Texas to be. Part of our mission statement, it's number 4 on our mission statement, we got some flyers over there, you can see it, is to foster a cooperative relationship with law enforcement to minimize negative encounters. Our goal is not to go out there and see how many cops can pull us over. As a matter of fact, our goal is to not have any interactions with cops. But if we do have interactions, we want to be cordial. We want to be nice, we want to have a cordial conversation, and we want to be able to discuss things with them. It's not confrontational. I'm going to explain some things. And again, this is a wide brush. There are people who are confrontational with open carry. But as far as most people in the 44 states that allow open carry, not all of them, for example, believe it or not, Massachusetts and Maryland are open carry, but good luck getting a license. So even though there's 44 states, that doesn't mean necessarily, and by the way, one of the legislators in Maryland earlier this year tested the open carry law. He had a license, he open carried, and guess what? The sheriff picked him up and took him home. So, even though it's perfectly legal. So, it's not confrontational, and I'll explain how it's not a little bit into this, because it'll flush itself out. The second one is the open carry makes you a target. I hear this all the time. You're going to be the first one shot. Somebody's going to come up to you and they're going to steal your firearm. Yeah. The reality is, when you open carry, you're the last person that guy wants to mess with. Because a criminal, whenever he's going to commit something, always through his head, he might not look at it this way, he might not define it this way, but he is always doing what we call in the Army a risk-benefit analysis. If I conduct this operation, what is the risk, and then what is the benefit? If the benefit is the fall of Baghdad, then obviously I have to accept a lot of risk. Am I willing to accept 90% attrition for taking, Normandy? And then if he sees you, sees that you're armed, automatically his risk goes up. And I might have $20 in my wallet. And so what's the benefit there? Now obviously if I'm driving out of a mansion and the guy pulls up, he might think there's a bigger benefit to that. But they're always weighing this. This is why criminals always rob empty houses. Because the benefit is high, the risk is low. When you open carry, you're telling that guy that I am willing to defend my life and the lives of those around me with lethal force if necessary. Do you really want your life to be dependent on your next action? And generally they will not. There's a great story out of Kennesaw, Georgia, a couple of years ago. 2 carloads full of thugs pull up to an IHOP, or Waffle House, excuse me, Waffle House. Pull up to a Waffle House at 5:30 in the morning. They send in a scout to find out, okay, go inside and see, is it packed, who's in there, whatever. He walks in, there's 2 customers and of course some employees. Those 2 customers are both armed with .45 caliber handguns, visibly, on their hips. That scout goes out, goes back to the 2 carloads full of thugs, and I guess they decided, okay, that's not worth it, we're going to drive off. Well, thankfully, and the reason we know this story, is a sheriff's deputy was passing by at about that time and thought it was odd that there were these 2 carloads full of people in the alley behind the Waffle House. So he pulls up, and what does he see? He sees ski masks, rifles, and pistols, and 2 carloads full of guys. This one cop, who was greatly outnumbered, these 2 guys inside the Waffle House who were greatly outnumbered, they were afraid to stand up and do something against these 2 individuals. Greatly outarmed, greatly outnumbered, but they weren't a target. As a matter of fact, they probably saved someone's life that day. Who knows what they could have done with all those rifles and pistols for those people in Waffle House. Open carry removes the tactical advantage. I hear this all the time. If this were true, when I was in Iraq in 2003, we would have hidden our tanks. Okay? We would have hidden our rifles as we patrolled the streets of Fallujah. It doesn't, as a matter of fact, I think the best tactical advantage you can have, and George Bush tried this in 2003 and 2. The best tactical advantage is to show force. He put me, I was in 3rd ID at the time, 3rd Infantry Division. He put me and my fellow soldiers on the border of Iraq and Kuwait and tried to show them that we have guns and we're not afraid to use them if you don't capitulate. It's the same thing at our level. The tactical advantage is removed when the criminal doesn't know you have a gun. Because he is thinking in his mind, think about this, there are 800,000 concealed handgun licenses, I think, or is it 600,000? I can't remember. Okay, so somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000 concealed handgun licenses in Texas. I think it's 800. And how many millions of people are there in Texas? There are, I think,
25 million.
20. I was going to say 23, but about 25 million people in Texas.
Documented or
For numbers. Good point.
That we know
Okay,
of.
so there's 2 million people in Texas. But the ratio, so the criminal, here's that risk benefit again. At least 800,000 people are armed. That means that maybe 1 in 10 people that I want to rob is going to have a handgun. Is that risk very high for him? The likelihood that that person has a handgun is very low for the criminal. So you're already a target before you're able to pull out that handgun if you have it. Additionally, let's use that scenario again in IHOP, or Waffle House, I should say that. Let's assume that both of those guys had concealed handguns. The scout went in there, he saw 2 people in the restaurant and some employees. What do you think he would have told those guys back in the car? Hey, there's only 2 guys in there.
They're ripe for it.
That's right, they're ripe for the picking. So now you've got all these people rushing in with rifles and pistols, and a crime is already in progress before you can pull out your handgun. You have to respond to a crime in progress. And that adds, for anybody that's been in some kind of an emergency situation, that adds a lot of risk just using that handgun. Because now you've got people who are panicked. And now you're panicked. Because if you've never had to point a firearm at a human being, it's not easy. We joke about it. You know, I hear it all the time. You know, someone breaks into my house and he's going to get a 45 slug right to the chest. I'm telling you, let me tell you, that first shot that I ever had to fire in Iraq was the hardest shot. And that guy's face is emblazoned in my mind. I think about that every single day. Whether you are justified in shooting another human being or not, you're going to think about that for the rest of your life. And you're going to doubt yourself when the time comes. So why even deal with having to deal with a situation that's already happening? So it doesn't remove the tactical advantage. It's actually the best tactical advantage there is, allowing open carry. Open carry is just to bait cops. This kind of goes up to the confrontational thing. Here's what this is the gospel according to CJ. Are cops really so stupid that when they see a gun, they can't help but be a moth to that light? That they can't help themselves, that they see a gun, they've just got to do something. Because that's what baiting cops would suggest. Fish want to survive. They don't, it's a natural instinct when they see something moving in the water, they got to go and take it. That's bait. But when we're out there open carrying, or you're out there open carrying, the point isn't to bait cops. The cops are baiting themselves if they're seeing a perfectly legal activity and they're coming up to you and bothering you. The point isn't to bait cops. It would be the same thing as if you were driving the speed limit. Are you baiting cops to come and stop you for not speeding? So we've got to get out of that mentality. Now, yes, police have to respond. And we understand that because sometimes there are many sheeple in America that don't understand what freedom looks like. They don't care what freedom looks like. And they're afraid if they see a picture of a gun. So they're going to call the police, and the police have a duty to at least respond and find out what's going on. In my situation, if the cop would have just talked to me like a human being, I would have been about my merry way. But he wanted to be a bully. And I'm a combat veteran. I don't take very well to bullies. And so I didn't exactly go friendly. Once he decided to cram his foot on my foot and stick a gun to my head, I lost all respect at that point. But up to that point, I was very respectful. So it's not about baiting cops. We have very good, in Open Carry, Texas, we enjoy such a great relationship. I've got personal cell phone numbers of every police chief in every major city in Texas. I've got cell phone numbers of most sheriffs throughout Texas because they understand who we are and how we operate. There's a group up in Dallas-Fort Worth that doesn't enjoy very friendly relationships with the police because they do that kind of stuff. They will go and follow cops around at sobriety checkpoints or when they pull people over for speeding or whatever, and they will scream profanities at them and all that kind of stuff and just give them a reason. That's not who we are. And we enjoy a very good relationship because of the way that we do that. And then finally, open carry is about exhibitionism. You know, it's funny, I joke about if we get open carry next year and it's unlicensed open carry, I'm going to treat myself to a Desert Eagle 50 caliber pistol. I don't know why anyone would need a 50 caliber pistol because I'll probably shoot it once and then realize what a mistake this was. 50 caliber machine guns are bad enough, but put that round into a pistol. But I joke about the fact that I'm going to get this really snazzy $3,000 gold Desert Eagle, and by golly, I'm going to strap that on my side. I'm going to walk proudly with it. It's a joke, but it's not about exhibitionism. It's about all those things I told you about before. Will there be people who want to walk like this as they go everywhere? There probably will, but that's not the point of this. I think I already highlighted what the point of it is. All right, facts about open carry. 44 states currently have some form of open carry. And I put Florida on there because even though they're not an open carry state, the law is written to where if you're fishing or hunting, you could open carry a handgun. So they've got a quasi-open carry law. So all I've got to do if I want to open carry in Florida is just carry around a fishing pole.
What's your mic doing?
Yeah, what's your mic doing? As a matter of fact, this is funny. We've actually got a group of Open Carry Texas supporters in Jacksonville, Florida, and they go to the pier all the time out there in Jacksonville, Florida, and take pictures of them with their OCT hats, open carrying their pistols with their fishing poles. So, but anyway, only 44 states, 45 if you count Florida, but we don't want to pad the stats, so we stick with 44. 30, it's 31 now. 31 of these states have unlicensed open carry. Now what that means is, of course, if you open carry, you don't need a license. Here's the great thing about open carry, and I think I missed this earlier. When you open carry, you have nothing to hide. Let me ask you this. When I walked up here, how many people noticed I had a handgun on? Quite a few people, I would imagine. So, when I open carry, and again, open carry will not, I don't open carry in every situation. There are situations where I won't do it. But I know that all the eyes are on me. Does a criminal want everybody watching him before he's about to commit a crime? No. He wants the element of surprise. So he's not going to open carry his pistol. That's why 31 states don't require a license, because typically when you open carry, you're not doing anything wrong. Because you know, and I know, that everybody's watching every move I make. Even those concealed carry guys, they're really watching. If he makes one move towards that gun, I'm going to draw on him. So unlicensed open carry, which is what we're fighting for here in Texas. I'll go over that a little bit more. But 31 states have unlicensed open carry. And many of those states, actually the majority of those states require licenses for concealed carry, but no licenses for open carry for the very reason I told you about. If you're hiding your gun, why are you hiding it? The state wants to make sure that if you are hiding your gun, that you're not trying to commit a crime. Now it doesn't stop criminals, but that's the theory behind it, is if you're hiding a gun, I want to know who you are. And I'm going to drop my phone. All right. 5 states have constitutional carry. So 5 of these 30 states allow unlicensed open carry and unlicensed concealed carry. Say again?
Unlicensed?
Unlicensed. No license at all to carry a handgun.
Second Amendment pure.
Second Amendment pure.
Man, we need that.
Well, that's what we are fighting for. And let me tell you what, those 5 states enjoy very low violent crime rates. You've got Alaska, Wyoming, Arkansas, Vermont, and Arizona. Did I say Arizona? Yeah. Okay, Alaska. It's one of the A's. 5 states have constitutional carry. We've got a bill that we submitted that's already been pre-filed for constitutional carry. That is House Bill 195. That is our bill. What that does not do, actually I think I get into 195 later, so I'm not going to go into deep depth in that. 5 states have constitutional carry. Texas laws, look who we're in line with. Good. Our gun laws are not much different than these guys.
That's bad.
I'm not happy with that. Now the other 2 states, again, that are on here that you don't see is South Carolina, which is another oddball, and Florida. I just thought it'd be nice to highlight those 3. All right, here's what we're fighting for. Some of y'all are going to look at this and go, "You're psycho." Constitutional carry, I already covered that. Voluntary CHL process. We don't want to get rid of this concealed handgun license. Why? Because my daughter goes to OSU. Don't hold it against my family. I tried to talk her out of it. But she goes to Oklahoma State University. And when I go to Oklahoma, I want to be able to open carry my handgun because they have an open carry law. But to open carry in Oklahoma, you have to have a CHL, either from that state or a reciprocal state. So we want to maintain the CHL on a voluntary basis for people like me who travel outside the country. Also, being in the Army, not anymore, but I used to travel a lot. And I want to be able to carry in those states that require me to have a license to either conceal or open carry. So we want a voluntary CHL process. Hey, if you guys want to pay $250 to exercise your rights, by all means, go ahead and do it. But inside the great state of Texas, if I don't want to, I shouldn't be forced to do that. We want to reduce the CHL cost. I just mentioned $250. That is absurd. Now, I know when I got my CHL, I got lucky because I'm an active duty soldier. I didn't have to pay the $150, but I still ended up paying about $120 because you got your $100 class, you got your $10 photo, your $10 fingerprints, and by the time it's all added up, if you're not a soldier, and veterans don't get that $140 discount. That's only for active duty. So you're talking $250. What's that?
Yes, you do.
They do?
Especially.
Oh, well, certain veterans do, yes, but not if you serve 5 years and you get out and you're a veteran, you don't get your $140 isn't waived. Disabled veterans do. Well, I guess combat wounded would be. Purple Heart recipients do, and certain medals for valor. I think you also don't have to, but still. Before I moved here, back home, and I'm native Texan, I was in Alabama, stationed at Redstone Arsenal. My CHL cost me 20 bucks. That was it. $20, no classes, no nothing, 20 bucks. And actually, 20 bucks was to get a little plastic, or, you know, like a driver's license type card. If you just wanted a piece of paper that said you've got a CHL, it's only 10 bucks. Georgia, 20 bucks. I got a Georgia CHL, 20 bucks. Arizona, 50 bucks. Utah, 60 bucks. There is absolutely no reason why you have to pay $250 tax. You know the Supreme Court ruled that a tax on newspapers was unconstitutional because it's a First Amendment right?
Second Amendment right?
What about our Second Amendment right? So I don't support any mandatory fees to exercise your rights, but I can almost understand a $10 or $20 fee because the state does have to pay for a background check. So I understand having to recoup those costs. But profiting off of my rights, I have a big problem. And that's what Texas does. They are profiting off your rights. clarification of disorderly conduct statute. Last year, and we are proud to say we haven't had any arrests this year. Our last arrest was in November of last year. But we've had 23 arrests across the state. 17 of them, 6 of them went to trial. 17 were just thrown out. 3 of them went to trial and were found innocent. And then the other 3, well, one of them was mine. Ultimately I was found guilty of a crime that they didn't even arrest me for. They, instead of recognizing they made a mistake, they just kept changing the charges until they found something that could stick. And I ended up getting found guilty of interference, which is, I mean, if a cop comes up to you and says, hop on one foot, and you don't, legally that's interference. All right, fix the CHL suspension guidelines. Now this is kind of personal, but these days, if you sneeze the wrong way, you're probably committing a crime. And Texas law says if you are convicted of a Class B misdemeanor or higher, it doesn't matter if it's littering, it doesn't matter if it's highway racing, it doesn't matter if it's putting a bumblebee on a jar of honey that's not 100% honey. Did you know that's a crime? If you got an imitation jar of honey and you put a bumblebee on it, it's a crime in Texas?
Why?
Because they say it's a crime.
Because they say it's a crime, right. So if you get convicted of a Class B misdemeanor, you lose your concealed handgun license for 5 years. It doesn't matter if it had to do with a gun or not. We want to fix that. The only reason you should lose your concealed handgun license and your right to carry is if you abuse that right by using a firearm in the commission of a crime, or it's a violent crime, if you've got a violent tendency. Let's see, strengthen preemption. Right now, no municipality, if Bryan College Station wanted to say we don't like open carry, you can't have open carry rifles within our city limits, we can tell them go pound sand. State law says you can't do that. We had an issue in San Antonio. We successfully got overturned. They had a law that you can't carry a loaded rifle or shotgun within city limits. Well, guess what we did? We carried a loaded rifle, shotgun within city limits. Not only did we do that, we brought 1,200 people to the Alamo to do it. And that was in August of last year, the biggest show of armed force since the Alamo first fell. And not a single person was hurt, killed, maimed, raped, robbed, anything like that. But we want to strengthen that preemption because what happened is some of those arrests that I talked about from last year happened at the Capitol grounds. And Capitol DPS troopers are creating these rules about who can carry where in Austin. And so it's, even though municipalities can't do that, it doesn't say that like Department of Transportation can't create a rule. We've got the TABC creating a rule. As a matter of fact, here's an interesting fact for you, because this is one of the other things that we're trying to do is repeal TABC rules. If we get unlicensed open carry and we don't do anything else with our laws, the fact that I walk through this door, because they sell alcohol, they're not a 51% establishment, but they have a liquor license. The second I walk through that door and I don't have a license to carry this pistol, I'm a felon. If I have a license, I'm scot-free, I'm good to go. Because any TABC licensed facility, that includes all Walmarts, most restaurants, gas stations, any place that just sells alcohol, even if it's not for consumption, you cannot carry an unlicensed firearm in that business. So we want to repeal these stupid rules. They shouldn't be there anyway, but they're there now. And then abolish gun-free zones. How do those work? They work great for the criminals and the thugs. Right.
They get away with shooting kids.
Yeah. All right, so this is our bill, HB 195. What does it do? Y'all probably heard about it. Representative Stickland is our sponsor. We are working on a Senate sponsor right now. There are 7 open carry bills that have been filed, pre-filed already. I'll tell you something. That would not have been the case had it not been for what we've been doing. And I know we took a lot of heat early on for carrying around rifles. The TSRA, the Texas State Rifle Association, was heavily condemning us for what we were doing. They said that we're going to be the reason we never get open carry. We're going to ruin it for everybody, for the way we were doing it. And they never once came to one of our rallies and saw what we were doing. They just saw what the media was saying about what we were doing. And you would think the TSRA would understand how the media bias is. And so now, here we are, almost 2 years later, And we've got 7 open carry bills. The last 3 sessions, only 1 open carry bill has ever been filed. It's been filed by the same guy who's not in office anymore. He lost his election this year. So 7 bills. 6 of those are for licensed carry, licensed open carry. If you have a CHL, you'll be able to open carry. Our bill, HB 195, will make our laws just like Arizona. Constitutional carry, unlicensed open and concealed carry, but you can have that voluntary CHL. It doesn't abolish or even touch the CHL process. Actually, it doesn't touch anything else. All it says is you don't need a license to carry within the state limits. What does it do? All right, he's our sponsor. I talked about that. It doesn't abolish the CHL. Makes Texas gun laws similar to Arizona. Look, Arizona passed this bill almost exactly like ours in 2010. And their crime rate has dropped 36%. Their violent crime rate has dropped 36%. If you look at rapes, 75%. So, obviously, a bunch of people that, you know, one of the myths that I put on, I need to add to this, is that if we do unlicensed carry, anyone and everyone's just going to walk around and be able to carry a gun, and we're not going to know who the good guy is from the bad guy and all that kind of stuff. A quick hint. If somebody's pointing a gun at you, they're probably a bad guy. If there's a gun in a holster, he's probably not a bad guy. So once he takes it out of that holster, that's when you've got to make that decision. You could use that same thing for police officers and soldiers. How do I know the difference between a corrupt cop and a good cop? You just don't. Freedom is dangerous. I think that was Benjamin Franklin said that. Paraphrasing. And then license versus unlicensed carry. Here's the thing about licensed carry. When you accept a license, and I know a lot of people believe, hey, you know, we should be able to carry, but you should get a license because you should go under a background check, you should have training, you should have all this kind of stuff. How many people were taught how to shoot guns by their father, or their mother, or their family? All right. So who's the state to tell you that you've got to go get training anyway? Most people, when they buy a handgun, it's like buying a car. When I buy a car, before I drive it off that lot, I want to know how all the buttons work. I want to know where the pedals are. I want to know how the gears work. I want to know how the car works. I don't drive that big piece of machinery without being trained on it. The same is with a gun. Most people who own a gun go to a range. They learn how to shoot it. Not a lot of people do. The people that leave their guns in their house, a lot of those people probably don't go to the range because generally they're in the inner cities and there's really not a place to go shoot. But the majority of people already get training. So why does the state have to tell you that you need to get a license? A guy that served 3 years in the military, and you know maybe that was 20 years ago, why does he have to get a license? Why is the state telling you? Now, and also, when you allow the state to dictate permission slips for licensed carry, they get to decide what are the exemptions to that privilege. 1995, the Brady Bill was passed. That screwed up a lot of stuff. It created the NICS system, which is the background check system, right? Can anybody think, and it was implemented in 1999. It didn't seem that long ago. Did you know we didn't have background checks until 1999? And how many school shootings does anybody remember prior to 1999?
Zero.
Yeah, it was pretty rare. I mean, I'm sure it happened. You could probably find something, but it was pretty rare. So what are background checks really doing? All they're doing is telling the government who's got a gun. That's it. And then, so now we've got, okay, felons can't have a gun. Did you know that if you write a check over $50, that's a felony? And now you've lost your rights for the rest of your life?
What?
Yeah, any felony. If you are a felon, you lose your right to carry. 16-year-old kid gets in with a bad group of people. They decide to go out one day and you know, they get dared to, hey, there's a car, he left his keys in there, you know, take it. Grand Theft Auto, kid's got 17 years old, 16 years old, now he's got a felony on his record, he's 48 now. This is a real case, by the way, that I'm talking about. This guy's 48 now, but because he was convicted of Grand Theft Auto, a felony, now it was adjudicated, which means he was convicted of the felony because he pled guilty, but he had, basically all he had to do was do some community service. Most of his sentence was commuted, but he still got that felony from 16 years old. Never committed a crime, never in so much as a Class B misdemeanor the rest of his life. Here he is, 32 years later, and he still can't legally carry a firearm because felons are barred from carrying firearms. Felons. And that sounds good. People are like, yeah, we can't have felons carrying firearms, but Remember what I said? If I was to walk in here without a license, if I didn't have a license to carry this, and I walked into this business, I'm a felon. So.
Yeah, but how many felons do carry anyway?
Exactly. But the point is, when we hear these great liberal lies about we can't have felons carrying firearms, everyone's like, yeah, you know, you're right. And we don't think about what is a felony these days. In New York, there are 6 degrees of felonies. 6. You commit a felony probably by crossing the road. I mean, there's so many felonies. And so when the government is allowed to dictate who can exercise their right to self-defense, then they can say anything. In Texas, they're not comfortable with just felons. They want anybody that's convicted of a Class B misdemeanor. So that's what we do when we allow licensing. And then, okay, yeah, that was it for that. Now I had another point to make, and it escaped my head. In Texas, I talked about this a little earlier. Isn't it weird that that's legal on the left, but that is not legal on the right? It boggles my mind that I can walk around with an AR-15, and believe me, I don't like walking around with an AR-15, and most of the time I don't. But it's the only thing that I can do sometimes. I hope I was trying to get that thought back in my head about licensing. Oh, imagine this. It's 1773. We've just gotten the Stamp Act. Actually, I think the Stamp Act was 1767. But we've got the Stamp Act. Now we've got the Coercive Acts, the Townsend Acts. We've got all these things, right? And the people are very upset. So the government knows, oh my gosh, these people are pretty upset at what we're doing. So anyone that doesn't like this, you've got to register all your firearms now. To carry your firearms, colonists, you have to get a license. If you don't get a license, we're going to arrest you. If we arrest you, once you're arrested and you're convicted, then now you lose your gun rights. Can you imagine where we would be? The point of the Second Amendment, and this is the what some would call the extremist view, but it's really not. The reason we do not have a rogue, tyrannical government, now, as rogue or tyrannical as it could be, let's put that. Let me qualify that. The reason we don't have a rogue or tyrannical government as we could be having, imagine Barack Obama unchallenged. The point of the Second Amendment isn't to do a violent overthrow of the government. The point of the Second Amendment is to keep that government in check. Because it knows that there are 300+ million firearms in this country. Now, it's a false quote. You've probably heard this quote from Admiral Hirohito that says, we can't attack the mainland because there's a gun behind every blade of grass. It's actually not real, but the sentiment is pretty decent. One of the reasons probably that we haven't been invaded other than by terrorists and illegals is because everybody's got a firearm. So that's the other thing about licensing. And you know what? If you want to voluntarily subject yourself to a licensing scheme, I have no problem with that. But don't force me to exercise my Second Amendment. I'm a God-fearing, church-going man. Every Sunday I'm in church for 3 hours. I love my Father in heaven. And I would not be happy if I had to pay my bishop $250 for a license to go to his church. I would not want to have to pay for a $250 license to stand up here and talk to you today. Why should I be happy to pay for a $250 license to exercise my right to self-defense? Because I live, I have a right to protect that life. And if I have a right to protect that life, I have a right to the means by which to do it. And that is my Second Amendment right. And they talk about repealing the Second Amendment. Guess what? Even if they repeal the Second Amendment, that doesn't negate our rights. Those rights are still there. That just tells the government they can't do anything about it. All right, I'll open it up to questions. I appreciate your time. Pam?
I think you just answered it, but I was just going to say, if you had to tell people one reason why we should have open carry.
That was it. That's why I always end with that. I always end with that because my right to self-defense is inalienable. My right to life is inalienable. Liberty, inalienable. If a guy comes to my house and he's holding me up with a gun, I have no liberty.
as the Declaration said, that's the purpose of government anyway.
To protect those
Protect
things.
those inalienable
And see, the
Not take it
Constitution,
away.
the Constitution doesn't have anything to do with you and me. The Constitution is for the federal government. That's it.
Keeps them in check, supposedly.
And I think we've learned, Mark, in our Constitution classes, Second Amendment does not give us that right.
Right. Yep,
Creator and now.
exactly. Yes, sir.
Why do you advocate for a voluntary CHL process rather than doing something like what Vermont, Arkansas, Alabama, and the rest of the constitutional carry states do? Other states honor their permitting process, but their permitting process is more or less a, this person's a good person letter from the local sheriff.
Well, that's pretty much what ours would go to.
There's no fees associated with any of that stuff.
Oh, well, that'd be nice. I mean, I'm all for making it zero. Absolutely.
Same here.
We've got to, here's the thing, and believe it or not, here's what, I've been going down to the Capitol every Friday and speaking with legislators. They're not there anymore, so I'll start back again in January. Guess why they tell me that their number one reason for why they really don't want to get rid of the CHL?
Revenue.
Revenue.
Are you kidding me?
They actually tell me that.
That's
They
what,
tell me that.
yes.
By the way, all veterans are $25.
They all,
It is? Okay.
they want
Thank you
money.
for correcting me. Thank you for correcting me. All
Money.
veterans are $25. That's still $25 for a guy that's, you know, I've never scored less than a 38 out of 40 on, and that was in basic training with a drill sergeant yelling at me. But what was the point? Revenue, yeah. So they literally tell me, well, how much is this going to cost us? How much is this going to cost? It's going to cost us nothing. It's our liberty.
Bring in money.
You should be profiting, yeah. But that, believe it or not, that's what I hear all the time. Well, I don't think we're going to get that. Not because we can't trust Texans. Not because there's going to be mayhem and blood in the streets. But because Texas stands to lose a lot of money.
We're on the gravy train.
So how much money are they talking?
How many
Well,
CHL holders do we have in
There's
Texas?
800,000 CHL holders times $140 at least.
5-year renewals.
Every 5 years, you got to renew that.
800, 8 million, you said?
We're talking-
8 million?
We're talking $112 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100 million, that's real money.
What percentage of those are
But
veterans?
that's,
Yeah, I don't know. I
it's
mean,
not
that's,
every year.
average.
That's not every year.
it's not every year.
It seems like more every year are getting them for the first time.
But look at this.
Yeah.
They reduced the training requirement from 8 hours to 4 hours, right? But they didn't reduce your cost. I'm still paying the same price for CHL classes that I was when it was 8 hours.
If it was really about training, are you really getting more training in less time?
And the CHL
So-
process here isn't about
It's not
teaching
about
you
training.
firearm safety. It's about teaching you the law.
Teaching when you can trust them.
Right.
Your parents teach you
Sure.
that safety.
Originally, if I remember right, the money that they brought in
Sorry.
from these licenses was staying within that organization to pay for their processing fees and any training stuff they set up and stuff. I know at one time, there was a move to actually reduce fees because they had an excess of money. But I did not know that any of that money was available to the rest of the state government for anything. Is that change? Is there, or
Now,
you're talking about the legislators thinking of it as revenue? If it's not going to anything but this program,
it can't
it's
go
not
that
really
program because
revenue.
the state doesn't do anything. To become a CHL instructor, you have to pay the state to do that. But
Yeah,
then once you've done that, they don't get any revenue from these classes that these guys give.
yeah, I'm
So
saying
they're
that
not- they're
money
not-
they had was already in excess of
Right.
their cost. If it's still sitting there, then you're not costing the state anything by taking some of it away, because unless they change that law to where it goes back into the general fund, then they can play with it.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, you know, I said that I'm ignorant in some things. I'm ignorant in that. I don't know where that money goes. Quite frankly, I bet you the legislators don't know where that money goes.
That's what I'm thinking. If they can't get their hands on it,
All right.
then you can tell them that. They say, oh, well, then that's not a problem.
Any other questions? I don't want to take up.
Here's a question that I'm still trying to, I'm afraid I kind of know the answer just because of, you know, just people's in general unwillingness to, you know, stand against a government that's getting more harmful and anti-American every day. And that is, you know, so I read the Texas CHL forums, and overwhelmingly, these people are not for open carry, and I'm just flabbergasted.
You know why? It's because of all this right here.
And it's,
Right here.
actually, I think you're right.
This is it. Because I don't know who's been selling this
and
bill of goods.
Yeah, you'll see
I
that.
really don't know who's been selling this bill of goods, but I will tell you that I've heard these exact same things told directly to me from the NRA and TSRA. I'll just leave it at that. I don't know where this stuff's coming from, that everybody has these things, but yes, sir, last one. You had a question?
Your experience with this police officer is not very far removed from the experience that the man had in Victoria last week. Everybody see that?
Yes, the guy that was had his video almost deleted. No, this is a different one.
It was the older guy that was driving a car. He was test driving a car.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He gets out.
Gets tasered twice.
What you described for you was pretty preposterous, but this deal in Victoria should tell everybody there are policemen out there who think that their job is to make you obey them rather than them being a servant of the public and to protect the peace.
Right.
And so I don't believe that there would be a high number of police officers with that ideology, but a very low number is too many.
Right.
One of the things I'm glad you're doing is making relationships with law enforcement, which is something all of us need to do.
Yes, sir.
Whether it's taking a citizen police course or whatever it is.
Brian wants
This that you're doing, I think, will speak to this business of Mr. Nazi Cop. And that's a side issue that we can benefit with what you're doing.
And I'll tell you, like I said, last year we had so many arrests because cops just did not understand.
How
Nowadays,
can a policeman not understand?
Because
it's a power thing.
Right, that's just what I was saying.
But we have not had every encounter now that we have. First of all, there's hardly ever a 911 call ever made now in Texas because we've let everybody know that what we're doing is perfectly legal. Whereas last year, every time we had an event, there was a 911 call. And all the police would always come out there and they would be like, man, you're doing it wrong, blah, blah, blah. Now, if there is a 911 call, which is rare, because every time a cop comes to us and says we got a call, we always do an open records request to find out if that's true. Believe it or not, we get lied to. A cop just doesn't like the fact that we're carrying. He comes out there and says, I got a call. You know, can you guys leave? Because he doesn't like us being out there. We do an open records request, there's no call. So, but we don't have that problem anymore. We have 99% of the time, we have a great relationship with police officers. We just had in Houston, we had a guy that was open carrying. Cops came out there, tried to force him to ID. He wasn't breaking any laws. He told him, look, I don't need to ID. Then they took his camera, and on camera, you can hear him saying, how do I delete this video? And, you know, I'm tired of you idiots coming out here. So there are those, but because I have a great relationship with Houston PD, I've been speaking directly with the chief, and I'm convinced so far that he's handling that correctly. We want criminal charges against that cop. We don't want him on leave. We don't want him kicked off the force. I want his badge and his certification so he can't go to another police force somewhere in Texas, and I want him in jail, because I would be in jail. All right, last question, because I know that I'm over my time and I don't want to encroach. But I want to ask you guys a question now. For those of you that were on the fence, did I convince you? I raise the hands. All right, kind of. You're closer to that edge, right? For those that were outright opposed, are you at least moved in that direction or not? Okay, was anybody not moved at all?
I'm worried about the ones, college students.
Oh, there you go.
Getting guns on campus. I can't
But
go
ma'am,
there yet.
I just retired from the Army and I'm in college right now.
Did it help Virginia Tech?
Virginia Tech
was a gun-free zone.
So,
Gun-free zones equal bad.
you know, if you want to do campus carry, make you know, B21, B25, B30. You know, pass a certain class. So, you know, I'm a college
Because there's a lot
student,
of
so when I
people
hear
who
people
Are you gonna
say,
get mad when your professor maybe gives you a grade you don't like, go in there and blow his head off?
oh gosh, no.
You're not 18.
But think about this, when that cop pulled his gun on me, did I grab my concealed handgun and blow his head off? Did when he came up to me, did I slam my rifle away and start opening fire with him? No, most people don't do that.
If you were 19, were you?
Federal law will allow
My-
19, you wouldn't be
My
carrying.
gunner in Iraq was 17.
You can't possess a pistol.
And the best way to answer the question
He turned 18.
is to look at states where they have
Okay.
campus carry. That's the
I
best
appreciate
way.
it.
Thank y'all very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tea Party.
I've got some flyers back there. I've got some decals. Our website is on there. It's opencarrytexas.org. We're going to have an event on January 26th. We're calling it Carry to the Capitol. We're asking everybody to openly carry an empty holster. If you want to put a banana in there or a cucumber, that's fine. But we're asking everybody to openly carry an empty holster to kind of make the point that there's a missing pistol there. January 26th, you can go to carrytothecapital.com for information on that. Yeah, opencarrytexas.org, and we are an official nonprofit, so if you can, throw a few coins into the bucket, we ask our members to be a high caliber donor. We don't have fees, but we ask, be a high caliber donor. Donate your favorite caliber, $2.23, $5.56, $7.62, whatever you want. Hopefully you like a 50 cal, because we like 50 cals. Anyway. All right, thank you.
I really appreciate you coming, Cindy. I know time just goes by so fast, and I hate to cut you off, but you can go to the website, and I know he's got his information. You can write him and keep in touch, and we really appreciate you coming. I think educating law enforcement is obviously